They told me never to look into the windows. That was the first rule I read in the delivery handbook, right there on the front page, typed in bold. Do not look into the windows. Ever. No explanation. No warning. Just a line that crawled under my skin like a splinter. I should have quit right then and there. But I didn't. And that's where everything began to go wrong. Asheville, Vermont wasn't on most maps. If you blinked while driving up Route 38, you'd miss the faded sign half swallowed by weeds. It read, "Welcome to Asheville, EST 1811. No slogan. No population count. Just rusted metal and silence. I came here after life chewed me up and spat me out in Boston. Too much noise. Too many memories. My sister's face haunted every street corner. I thought a quiet town might help me forget. I thought wrong. I took the job at Asheville Express because it was simple. Deliver packages. Follow the rules. Get paid. No nosy bosses, no office politics. Just me, a beat-up van, and a town that smelled like old pine and frozen soil. The guy who handed me the job was a wiry old man named Harris. Skin like paper. Eyes that never quite looked at you. You follow the handbook, he said, sliding a thin black binder across the table at the delivery office. No exceptions. Like company policy? No. Like survival. I laughed, but he didn't. My first night was quiet. I loaded a dozen packages into the van, all wrapped in brown paper and tied with twine. No labels. Just names written in old ink and addresses that looked like they hadn't changed since the 1800s. The first delivery was to Maple Hollow Road, house number 14. I parked out front. A single porch light flickered in the fog. The air smelled like burning wood and something sour. I grabbed the package and walked up the path. Leaves crunched beneath my boots, loud in the silence. Then I remembered the rule, don't look into the windows. Of course, that made me want to look. Human nature. Curiosity. I paused at the steps. The package felt heavier suddenly. The house loomed above me, its windows black and tall. Curtains swayed, even though there was no wind. I kept my eyes down, heart pounding for no reason I could explain. I knocked once. Silence. I knocked again. Still nothing. I placed the package on the doormat and turned to leave. Then I heard it. A creak behind me. The sound of a door swinging open. I didn't look back. I wanted to. Every instinct screamed to check. But something in my gut whispered, don't break the rule. Not on the first night. I walked back to the van, slower than I wanted. The door creaked again, louder. I felt eyes on my back. Heavy. Watching. My hand trembled as I opened the driver's side and slipped inside. The engine didn't start the first time. Or the second. By the third try, I was sweating. Then it caught with a cough, and I peeled away from Maple Hollow like something was chasing me. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, the door to house number 14 was wide open. And someone was standing just behind it, holding the package I'd left. But I couldn't see their face. Back at the depot, Harris was waiting by the door, smoking a thin cigarette with a shaking hand. Did you look in the window? He asked. No. Did you turn around when the door opened? No. He nodded once. Good. You'll last longer than the last guy. I didn't ask what happened to the last guy. I didn't want to know. But that night, lying in my creaky apartment above the general store, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure in the doorway. Still. Silent. Holding the package like it meant something more. And I realized something then, something that made my skin crawl. The package was never meant for them. It was meant for me. But only if I broke the rules. And someone in Asheville was counting on it. I remember the first delivery that truly made me uneasy. Not the ones where a customer stared too long, or handed me a tip with trembling hands. No, this one was different. It came with its own special instruction sheet, tucked into the manila envelope like a secret. The paper was thin and yellowed, like it had passed through too many hands. The instructions were typed in a rigid, all-cap font. Do not speak to the person inside. Knock twice. If the door creaks open, leave the package on the mat. Walk away. Do not turn your back until you reach the gate. The address, 113 Pine Street. I stared at the paper while sitting in my van, parked just a block away from the house. It was dusk. The sky had that cold purple tint, the kind that makes everything feel quieter than it should be. Asheville always felt a little dead, like the air had stopped moving years ago. But Pine Street felt hollow. The house at 113 was tucked between two much smaller homes, almost as if it had grown too large over the years. Vines clung to its walls like veins, dark windows stared out like blind eyes. The porch sagged, and a wind chime hung by a thread, spinning slowly even though there was no breeze. I parked my van along the curb and double-checked the label on the box. No name. Just the address. I stepped out into the cold. My boots crunched on gravel. No birds. No wind. Just the sound of my own breathing. The houses on either side had their curtains drawn tight. Lights were on, but no shadows moved behind them, as if the neighbors didn't want to see what I was doing. I reached the porch steps and paused. Knocked twice. I raised my hand to the door, heart picking up speed. Something about it felt wrong. The wood was darker near the bottom, stained in uneven patterns. A strip of worn-out cloth was nailed to the center, maybe once a welcome sign. Now it looked more like a warning. I knocked once. Then again. The sound echoed strangely, like it got swallowed before it reached the other side. I waited, and then the door creaked open. It didn't swing wildly, just a few inches, enough to reveal nothing but a slice of darkness beyond. No footsteps, no voices, no breath from within. I stood still. I didn't want to move, but the words on that paper returned, sharp and clear in my mind. Leave the package. Walk away. Do not turn your back. I knelt slowly, placed the small cardboard box right on the mat. My fingers brushed the wood, ice cold. I stood and stepped back once. Then again. I didn't turn around. I stared at that slightly open door as I walked backwards down the creaking steps, one careful foot after the other. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. A strange smell drifted from the doorway. Damp earth, mold, and something sour beneath it. When I reached the gate, I let my hand fall on the latch behind me. I didn't look away until I was through, and even then, I only turned my back once I'd put 10 feet between me and the sidewalk. I nearly ran to the van. Once inside, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and took a deep breath. My fingers trembled slightly. I hated that they did. I glanced back at the house. The door was closed, completely shut, as if it had never been open at all. The package I left gone. There was no one on the street. No footsteps behind me. But for some reason, my skin crawled like I was still being watched. I drove off, eyes darting to the rearview mirror more than they should have. Back at the depot, I told myself not to think about it. Just another weird job. The night was colder than usual. Not the kind of cold that bit at your skin, but the kind that slipped beneath your clothes and settled in your bones. The streets of Asheville were almost empty by 10 p.m., and the fog had rolled in thicker than I'd ever seen it. It wrapped around the lampposts like smoke from a dying fire, refusing to move even when the wind pushed at it. I checked the delivery slip again. 46, Hollow Bend Road. Rule for this one was simple enough. Do not speak to the resident. Deliver the package to the windowsill. Leave immediately. I remember thinking how strange that sounded. Who leaves things on a windowsill? I'd delivered to doorsteps, porches, even one guy's doghouse, but never a windowsill. Still, I followed the rules. Always. The house was small and worn, with peeling white paint and a roof that sagged in the middle. Its windows were tall and narrow, the glass so dusty it looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. But one window, the front one, was open just a crack, enough to let out a faint smell of something sweet and rotten, like flowers left too long in water. I stepped onto the creaking porch and took the package from my bag. It was light. Whatever was inside didn't shift or make noise. It felt still, heavy in a way that wasn't physical. As I reached for the windowsill, a voice came from behind the glass. Soft. Female. Tired. You're new here, aren't you? I froze. My fingers hovered an inch above the sill. I'm not supposed to talk, I said mostly to myself. She chuckled softly. It wasn't threatening, not exactly. But it made my stomach twist. They always say that at first, she whispered. Then one night, they start listening. I placed the package on the sill and turned to go, but the voice stopped me. Did they tell you about the boy who delivered here before you? I hesitated. Something about the way she said it made my legs want to run, but my curiosity pinned me in place. I didn't answer. He forgot the rule too. Just for a second. Asked me my name. That's all it took. I turned my head slightly, enough to see her shape in the dark window. She was only a shadow behind the glass, tall and still, but her voice was now just inches from me. What happened to him? I asked before I could stop myself. A long pause. Then, he delivers now too. But not in this town. The porch boards groaned under my weight. I realized then I hadn't taken a breath in nearly 10 seconds. Something about her voice had changed. It sounded farther away now, layered, like it was echoing in a deep hallway. I should go, I said, stepping off the porch. You already spoke, she replied softly. It knows now. That stopped me. What knows? No answer. The fog seemed to curl tighter around the house as I backed away. I didn't look back at the window, though every part of me wanted to. My heart pounded in my chest like a trapped bird. I got into my van, slammed the door shut, and sat in silence. The windshield fogged up within seconds. The heater wouldn't turn on. The street lamps outside blinked once, twice, then went dark. I didn't make any more deliveries that night. I drove home in silence, repeating to myself that I would never break a rule again. But deep down, I knew it didn't matter anymore. The moment I spoke back, something had heard me, and it was waiting. They told me not to speak to anyone after dark, especially not through a cracked window. It sounded like a stupid rule when I first read it in the delivery handbook. But in Ashmill, stupid rules keep you alive. Or at least, that's what I was starting to learn. The delivery that night was simple on paper. A package wrapped in plain brown paper, no return address, and a single instruction written in bold red ink. Delivered to 19 Willow Street. Do not speak. Do not wait. Do not look in the window. I remember laughing under my breath when I read it. I'd already done a dozen strange deliveries in the past 2 weeks. I'd knocked on doors with no handles. I'd left packages in bird baths. I'd even dropped one down an old well, like I was feeding something at the bottom. But this one, it felt different. Willow Street sat on the edge of town, where the houses thinned out and the forest crept in. It was colder there, even though it was midsummer. I noticed the bugs were quiet. No chirps. No rustling. Just the sound of my boots on the gravel and my breath fogging in the air. House 19 was pale green, almost gray in the moonlight. Its windows were covered in thick curtains, except for one. A small upstairs window cracked open, the curtain swaying gently like something had just moved. I walked up the steps, placed the package on the doormat, and was just about to turn and leave when I heard it. Hello. It was soft, almost like the wind. But it wasn't the wind. I froze. The voice had come from the cracked window above. Sebastian? My blood turned to ice. No one in Ashmill ever called me by name. Not unless I told them first. And I definitely didn't know anyone living here. I looked up, just a glance. Just enough to catch the edge of a face, pale, familiar, impossible. It was her. My sister, Clara. She'd been gone for 5 years. Vanished from a campground in upstate New York. No witnesses. No leads. Just gone. I had memorized every photo I had of her, every angle of her face. And that was her face in the window. Clara? I whispered, my voice dry and cracked. The curtain shifted more, revealing the full image. She was smiling, eyes wide, head tilted just slightly like she didn't understand where she was. Don't leave, she said softly. Come inside. Please. I took a step back. My mind was screaming every direction at once. Grief. Hope. Terror. The part of me that still woke up from dreams of her cried out to run to the door, to break it down, to grab her and never let go again. But the part of me that had been living in Ashmill, that part wanted to run. Because something was wrong with her face. It looked perfect at first. But the longer I stared, the more it didn't move. Her smile never faded. Her eyes never blinked. It was like watching a loop. Like someone was playing my memory back to me, but using her skin. I backed away slowly, heart racing. Then her voice changed. Sebastian, she said again, but this time lower. Hungrier. You broke the rule. The curtain snapped shut. And the window slammed. I ran. I didn't stop running until I got back to the van. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the keys twice before starting the engine. I sped down the empty road, tires skidding on loose gravel. The trees on either side looked like they were leaning closer. When I finally made it back to my apartment, I sat in the dark for what felt like hours, just listening to the creaks in the walls, the ticking of the clock, and my own breath. I didn't sleep. And the next morning, there was a new note taped to my door. One rule broken. Do not let it happen again. There was no signature. But the handwriting, it looked just like hers. I couldn't sleep. The night after I saw her, my sister, or something pretending to be her, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The shadows on the walls moved too slowly. The air in my room felt thick, like breathing through cloth. I kept hearing faint tapping sounds outside my window, but every time I checked, there was nothing. Just the trees swaying under the moonlight and the distant cry of an owl that sounded too much like a scream. By morning, I decided I wasn't going to follow the rules blindly anymore. I wanted answers. I drove down to the Ashmill Express depot earlier than usual, well before the others arrived. The building was nothing special, just a rusted-out warehouse with a flickering neon sign. But inside, behind the sorting station and the rows of brown packages, there was a room I'd never been inside before. The door was unmarked. It had a keypad and a small brass plate with no writing on it. I waited until no one was looking and slipped in behind someone carrying a box. He didn't notice me. Inside, it was colder. The walls were lined with metal filing cabinets, each labeled by date and address. I scanned quickly and found one marked Deliveries Restricted. I opened it. The files inside weren't normal delivery records. They were thin folders, each with a photo paper clipped to the front. All black and white. Blurry. Each one showed a house in town, the kind I'd driven past 100 times. Some photos had a red X on them. Others had handwritten notes in red ink. Knock once only. Do not speak. Do not accept anything. One file stopped me cold. It had my name on it. Sebastian Lane, priority route assignment. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were my past delivery logs, addresses, times, comments I never wrote. One entry from 3 nights ago read, Sebastian responded appropriately. Subject at 14, Bramble Lane followed protocol. No deviation. Proceed to Phase 2. Phase 2? What the hell was that? I took out my phone and started snapping pictures of everything. I didn't care if someone walked in. I needed proof. I needed to know what they were using me for. Just then, I heard a sound behind me. A cough. I turned slowly, and there he was. Eric. Curiosity can be dangerous, Sebastian, he said, his voice calm but sharp, like a blade dipped in honey. I shoved the file back into the drawer. What is all this? What are these phases? What are you people doing? He didn't flinch. Protecting the town. Keeping things in balance. By using us as a what? Messengers? Sacrifices? Eric stepped closer. He smelled like pine and cold metal. There are old things in this land, he said softly. Things that hunger for patterns, for ritual. Every delivery, every knock, every silence, it's part of the pattern. The offering network. It's not just a job, Sebastian. It's a system. A very old one. I stared at him. You knew what I saw in the woods, didn't you? Eric paused, then nodded. It's taken many forms. It often chooses ones that break people. Guilt is a powerful thread. My hands curled into fists. That thing wore my sister's face. He didn't deny it. But why me? I asked. Why bring me here? He looked at me with a kind of tired sadness. Because you follow rules. You obeyed without asking. That's rare now. But you're asking questions, and that makes you unstable. My heart pounded. My fingers itched to grab something heavy and throw it at him. But here's the truth, Eric said, stepping closer. You're not the first to see what's behind the rules. And you won't be the last. The others, well, let's just say they couldn't live with what they found. He smiled thinly. They didn't last long. That was when I knew. This wasn't just a job anymore. This was a trap. And I needed to find a way out before the next delivery knocked on my door. I left the room, not caring that he was still watching me. Not caring that I had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Outside, the fog was thicker. And somewhere in the trees, I swear I heard my sister's voice again, laughing. Only this time it sounded wrong. Too deep. Too slow. Like something else was learning how to mimic her. And getting better. Every single night. I didn't plan on going to the office that night. I had just returned from a delivery to a house that looked more like a mausoleum than a home. The woman who answered the door had no eyes. Only black holes where they should have been. Yet somehow she saw me. She whispered my name before I even said a word. I stood outside the Ashmill Express office, staring at the crooked wooden sign swinging gently in the wind. The windows were dark, except for the faint glow of a desk lamp inside. I could see Eric sitting at his desk, as calm as ever, scribbling something in a leather-bound book. I pushed the door open. The old bell above it gave a weak jingle. He didn't look up. You broke a rule, he said, as if he had been waiting for me. I just asked her if she was okay, I replied. She looked wrong. Wrong, he raised his eyes. She looked the way she had to. I walked closer, heart pounding but feet steady. Eric, what is this? What are we doing out there? Those packages, some of them smell like death. Others rattle like bones. This isn't just delivery. It's something else. He closed the book and placed his hands neatly in front of him. You weren't supposed to ask questions. That's rule number 1. You break that, and the rest will break you. I stepped closer, dropping a photo on his desk. It was from one of the packages I opened, a Polaroid of a small child, eyes wide, mouth sewn shut with black thread. Eric looked at it for a long time. Then he sighed, like a tired teacher dealing with a difficult student. Ashmill, he began, is a living thing. And like any living thing, it demands to be fed. Blood, silence, obedience. You think the rules are strange? They're not. They're old. Older than this town. Older than you or me. Why me? I asked. Why bring me into this? He chuckled, a sound that didn't match the coldness in his eyes. You were a drifter. No family left, no friends who'd check in. You lost your sister, remember? Vanished without a trace. That kind of grief makes you moldable. He stood up now. His shadow stretched long across the wooden floor. You were never just a driver, Sebastian. You were a candidate. A test. Deliveries are only half the job. The other half is surviving long enough to understand why they matter. I clenched my fists. That thing I saw in the woods, it wore my sister's face. Eric nodded slowly. Yes. It knows you. Knows what hurts you. That's how it speaks. Not with words. With memories, with fear. It's not trying to trick you, Sebastian. It's trying to welcome you. My stomach turned. I don't want its welcome. I want answers. And I want out. You can't leave Ashmill, he said flatly. Not anymore. The moment you broke a rule, it marked you. You belong to it now. Unless. He paused, as if savoring the silence. Unless you serve it fully. I shook my head. I'd rather burn this place to the ground. Eric leaned forward, his voice low and cold. Careful, Sebastian. Fire wakes it up. The air felt heavier then, as if the shadows in the room were listening. Watching. I backed away slowly, grabbing the photo from his desk. This isn't over, I told him. No, he said with a faint smile. It's just beginning. I stepped out into the night, the fog pressing close like a curtain drawn around the town. My breath felt sharp in my throat. I knew then, I wasn't just breaking rules anymore. I was breaking whatever held this town together. And something in the dark didn't like that. Not one bit. I woke up to screaming. Not the kind you hear in movies, sharp and dramatic. This was deeper. Raw. Like something was being ripped out of someone's chest. It echoed through the trees outside my window, bounced off the mountains, and settled into my bones. I sat up in bed, heart hammering. For a second, I hoped it was just a nightmare. But the sound came again, closer this time. I looked at the clock. 2:17 a.m. The power was out. No blinking red numbers. No humming fridge. Just the soft rustling of the curtains in the open window, and that awful, human-sounding scream coming from the edge of the woods. I hadn't made the delivery. The one to the red-marked house on Wren Hollow Road. The one Eric said was important. The one that came with the warning. Refusal feeds it more than acceptance. I had left the box on the floor of my truck. I thought if I ignored it, nothing would happen. Maybe I wanted to test if they were bluffing. Maybe I just wanted to feel like I had control over something in this cursed town. But I didn't. I pulled on my boots and jacket in the dark. My hands were shaking. I grabbed the flashlight and crept to the door, trying not to make a sound. I opened it slowly, half expecting to see someone, or something, waiting on the porch. Nothing. The street was dead quiet. The mist hung thick over the road like a blanket, swallowing up everything past a few feet. The streetlights flickered wildly, casting long, twitching shadows across the pavement. Then one by one they blinked out. Pop, pop, pop. Until I was standing in the dark. That's when I heard it again, closer now. Footsteps. Crunching on gravel. Slow. Uneven. And breathing. I pointed my flashlight toward the sound, and for a moment, all I saw were the trees. The gnarled branches moved slightly, though there was no wind. Then something stepped into the beam. It was wearing a face I knew. My sister's. Sarah. But she'd been gone for 6 years. Disappeared from a town miles away, on a camping trip no one ever came back from. We searched for weeks. No trace. She stepped forward, barefoot on the stones, wearing the same jacket she wore the last time I saw her. Her mouth moved. Why didn't you come for me? She asked. My body froze. My lips were dry. My mind screamed that it wasn't real, that it couldn't be her. Sarah? I whispered. But her eyes didn't blink. They didn't move. They weren't even human. Just black, like wet stone. Something deep inside me knew. This thing wasn't my sister. It was wearing her. Like a costume. I turned and ran. Back inside. Slammed the door. Locked every bolt I had. I backed away, flashlight shaking in my hand, trying to breathe. That was when the banging started. Not at the front door. At the walls. The windows. The roof. Like 100 hands slapping and clawing. Like they were testing every part of the house at once. And then it stopped. Silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. I stayed like that for what felt like an hour, sitting on the floor, gripping a kitchen knife with one hand and the flashlight in the other. I couldn't even cry. I just felt hollow. A soft tap came from the back door. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then 4 knocks. I dropped the knife. That was the knock from the handbook. The one that meant, do not open. Leave the package and run. Except I wasn't outside this time. I was on the wrong side of the door. The air grew cold. Not just chilly, wrong. Like something ancient had stepped into the room with me. The shadows stretched along the walls, even though no light moved. My skin felt too tight on my bones. And I realized then, this wasn't about the rules anymore. Something had been woken up. And it was in the town now. Maybe it had always been. I crawled to the window, peeking through a sliver in the curtains. The entire town was blacked out. Not a single light. Just pale shapes moving in the fog. Figures walking where no one should be. Some crawling. Some floating. I swear I saw one pull itself through a mailbox. Another was perched on a telephone pole, head upside down, grinning. Ashmill was no longer holding it back. Because I broke the chain. And I had no idea how to fix it. I wasn't sure what to expect when I made the decision to stop following the rules. In fact, I didn't even know if I could stop, if I'd be allowed to. But something about the way the town was cracking, the way the whispers in the woods grew louder, the way people began to change, pushed me forward. Maybe I wasn't running anymore. Maybe I was just waiting to see what came for me. That night, the air was thick with the kind of stillness that precedes a storm. The town was quiet, too quiet, like the calm before everything goes wrong. The moon hung low, a pale, sickly glow casting long shadows over the streets. The houses seemed to lean in on themselves, as if waiting for something. And somewhere deep in the woods, I could feel it, the presence watching. I had made my choice. I wasn't going to let Ashmill die. But I wasn't going to feed it either. I took the final delivery route of the night, the one I'd been dreading, the one that had been waiting for me ever since I first stepped foot in this cursed town. The one that led to the red door. Eric had warned me not to look at it, not to even think about it, but the rules had become meaningless to me now, nothing but chains meant to keep me in place. I wasn't afraid anymore. I needed to see it, to understand what had held this town in its grip for so long, what it had been feeding. I parked at the end of the street, my headlights casting long, uneven shadows over the cracked asphalt. The red door stood at the far end, just as I'd been told. It wasn't like any other door in the town. It was older, the wood warped and uneven, like it had been standing there for centuries. The paint was chipped, a deep crimson that seemed almost alive in the dark, pulsing with something I couldn't name. My stomach tightened as I stared at it. This was the moment. I grabbed the package, a small, unmarked box, and approached. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of the town's secrets pressing down on me. I reached the door and knocked twice, just like I had been told, just like I had done 100 times before. But this time, I didn't feel the usual calm that came after the knock, the stillness that made everything feel okay. Instead, I felt something shift, something aware. The door didn't creak open like it was supposed to. It didn't even move. It waited. I didn't know what was going to happen. Maybe that was the scariest part. It was like the air itself had frozen, and I was holding my breath, waiting for something I couldn't escape. Then I heard it. A sound like fingers brushing across glass, soft at first, almost inaudible, but then louder. The door slowly cracked open, just a sliver. A gust of cold air swept through the gap, biting my skin. I froze, my heart pounding, not knowing whether to run or stay. I dared to peer inside. What I saw wasn't what I had expected. It wasn't a person or a room, or even a hallway. What lay beyond the door was a void. A pitch-black emptiness that seemed to stretch on forever. There were no walls, no furniture. Just darkness, and the sound of something shifting in the distance. It felt like the world had slipped away, like reality itself had become thin and brittle. And I knew then, this wasn't just a door. It was a gateway. And whatever was waiting beyond it had been waiting a lot longer than I had. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder. The shape of something massive, dark, and wrong moved within the shadows. It wasn't a figure in the way you'd expect. It was more like the absence of shape, like something that couldn't exist in the light, but still reached for you when you weren't looking. I didn't need to see it fully. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach, a deep, gnawing hunger that made my bones ache. Before I could react, the door slammed shut. I jumped back, my heart in my throat, my breath coming in sharp gasps. I turned on my heel and ran like I'd never run before, as if the air itself was closing in behind me. But something was chasing me. I didn't need to look back to know it. The ground beneath my feet seemed to pull at me, trying to trip me, slow me down. The streets stretched longer, the houses twisting as I passed them. I couldn't see the town anymore. It was just a blur of shadows and half-formed shapes, as if the whole town were shifting. I didn't stop until I was at the edge of the woods, gasping for breath, my legs trembling beneath me. And then I realized, it wasn't just the town that had changed. I had changed. I had seen the thing behind the door. I had felt its presence. And now it was coming for me. A crackling sound echoed in the distance. A voice, Eric's voice, whispered through the trees, but it wasn't the Eric I knew. This voice was different. It was older, colder, like the wind itself had taken on human form. "It's too late, Sebastian." I turned slowly, and there he stood, Eric, standing at the edge of the woods, his eyes reflecting the same dark emptiness I'd just glimpsed beyond the red door. He smiled, but it wasn't a reassuring smile. It was something else, a warning. And then, everything went black. I didn't know what I expected to happen when I stepped into the woods, but I sure as hell wasn't prepared for the smell. It hit me first, an awful, pungent stench that made my stomach twist. It was the kind of smell that burned your lungs as you breathed it in, like something had rotted and then been left to simmer under a hot sun for years. The trees around me were too quiet, almost holding their breath. And then I heard it, the sound of my boots crunching through the dirt, breaking the silence. The woods of Ashmill always felt different when the moon was full. The shadows weren't just shadows, they seemed to move on their own, slipping between the trunks of the trees like they were alive. And tonight, they were even thicker, more solid, like they were waiting for something. Waiting for me. Eric had agreed to meet me here, though I couldn't quite understand why. He had always been calm, collected, and yet tonight he seemed rattled too. When I showed him the relic, something I'd found hidden beneath the floorboards of a dilapidated cabin during one of my deliveries, his face had gone pale. His eyes flickered like he knew exactly what it was, and for a brief second, just a second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. But he recovered quickly, masking it with his usual smugness, as if everything was going according to plan. We were standing on the edge of the clearing now. The full moon hung heavy above us, casting a ghostly light that painted everything silver. The trees in the distance seemed to lean in, as if they were listening, as if they knew what was about to happen. "Do you really think this will change anything?" Eric's voice broke the stillness. His breath was shallow, and for the first time, I saw him sweat. "You don't know what you're messing with, Sebastian." I turned to him. "I know exactly what I'm messing with, Eric, and I'm done playing by your rules." I held the relic out in front of me. It wasn't much, just a small, intricately carved piece of stone, like a charm or talisman. I'd found it buried deep beneath the floorboards in the cabin, where I'd made my first real mistake. I didn't know why I'd picked it up then. Something about it had felt wrong, but also right. Like it was waiting for me. Eric's eyes widened when he saw it. No, you can't. It's not." Before he could finish, a low rumble filled the air, like the earth was shifting beneath us. The ground trembled. The wind picked up, howling through the trees, and in the distance I saw it, moving slowly, purposefully. It was a shadow at first, then a shape, and then it was clear. Something monstrous. Something not of this world. A twisting, writhing mass of black tendrils, human faces shifting in and out of the darkness like ghosts trapped in an endless nightmare. The thing was beautiful in a horrible way, as if it were the embodiment of everything wrong with Ashmill. The curse, the lies, the silence. It was everything that had been hidden, everything the town had been offering up for years. I heard Eric take a step back, then another. "No, please, you don't understand." But it was too late for him. The creature wasn't interested in mercy, and it certainly wasn't interested in Eric. It reached out with a long, skeletal arm, its fingers elongated, tipped with claws that glinted in the moonlight. It was aiming for him, for Eric. He turned, but before he could run, the tendrils wrapped around his body, pulling him toward the dark maw of the creature. His screams echoed through the woods, but they were quickly swallowed by the thing. It didn't seem to care about his cries. It just consumed him, devoured him whole, like he was nothing more than a snack. I stood there frozen, the relic still in my hand. The thing that had been terrorizing Ashmill for decades, that had been fed by every rule, every delivery, every sacrifice, it was right in front of me. And it didn't care about me. Not yet. But it would. It always did. I took a step forward. Then another. Slowly, cautiously. I couldn't let it win. Not now. Not after everything I had learned. With one final deep breath, I raised the relic above my head. The air felt thick, charged, like I was on the edge of something impossible. I didn't know exactly what would happen, but I had to trust that this thing, this tiny stone, was my only shot at stopping it. I slammed the relic into the ground with all my strength. The earth cracked beneath me, sending a shockwave through the clearing. The creature let out a terrible screech, a noise that tore at the fabric of the night. The tendrils recoiled, its massive form shrinking, flickering, as if it were being pulled apart by some unseen force. It thrashed wildly, screeching in agony. And then it stopped. The woods fell silent again. The air, once heavy and oppressive, lightened. The shadows retreated. The creature was gone. But I knew it wasn't over. The town was already changing. The cursed land beneath Ashmill wasn't just going to disappear with a relic. It had too much power, too many memories. But I had done it. I had severed the connection, broken the chain. I turned to see what remained of Eric, but there was nothing. No body. No trace. The ground where he had stood was as empty as it had been when I first arrived. I took a deep breath, my heart still pounding in my chest. I had survived. For now. But I wasn't sure I would ever truly be free of Ashmill. As I made my way back through the woods, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. The darkness behind me was thick, impenetrable. And I knew it was still watching, still waiting. I couldn't outrun it. Not forever. And neither could anyone else. The road ahead of me stretched out like an endless line of questions I had no answers to. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter, the familiar hum of the engine under me almost soothing, yet there was a weight in the air. Something in my gut told me that, even though I was far from Ashmill, the town's shadow still loomed. I had taken this job as a fresh start, a way to get away from the memories, the grief, the pain of losing her. My sister, the one who vanished into the fog and left me with nothing but unanswered questions. At first, Ashmill seemed like the perfect place to disappear, to blend in, to find some peace. It wasn't far enough, though. Nothing ever is. I had thought running would save me. That if I could just follow the rules, keep my head down, I wouldn't have to face what happened that night. What I did. What I didn't do. But Ashmill, it changed me. The town, the rules, Eric. Everything was part of something much darker than I ever could have imagined. I looked out the window, the trees pressing in from both sides like they were watching me. The night was thick, the fog rising from the ground like ghosts of the past. The headlights cut through the mist, revealing nothing but the endless road, stretching into the unknown. A small town, another job. Another delivery. I'd done this 100 times before, each time thinking it might be the last. But somehow I knew this would be different. The package was small, no bigger than a book, wrapped in brown paper. The address was scrawled in faded ink, the house number barely visible, as though it had been left out in the rain for too long. 301 Rook Avenue. I hadn't heard of that street before, and there was something in the way the name sat on my tongue that made my skin crawl. Rook. Like a bird, or maybe a game of chess. Something that would move in the shadows. I pulled up in front of the house, the porch light flickering faintly, casting eerie shadows across the yard. It looked abandoned, but I knew better than to trust appearances. The rules never lied. There was always someone inside. Always someone watching. I sat in the truck for a moment, the engine idling, my mind racing through the same thoughts that had been haunting me since the day I left Ashmill. Was I being followed? Was the curse of that town still following me, just waiting for me to slip up? I didn't know. But I did know this. There was no going back. Not now. I had already crossed the line. Breaking the rules had cost me more than I could ever repay. And now, I was in too deep to turn around. I grabbed the package, my fingers trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. The porch creaked under my feet as I made my way to the door. I knocked 3 times. Rule number 1. There was no knocking more than that, no less. I waited, staring at the cracked pane on the door, watching the shadows shift in the dim light. A rustling from inside. The door swung open just enough to let a sliver of light spill out. No one stood there, but I could feel someone, something, on the other side. Delivery, I said, my voice too quiet, too unsure. The door didn't open any further. Instead, a voice, low and familiar, drifted from the darkness within. You're still running, aren't you, Sebastian? It was a voice I recognized. Eric's voice. I froze, the package hanging heavy in my hand. What do you mean? The laughter that followed was hollow, cold, and filled with a kind of understanding that made my stomach churn. You never really left, did you? Ashmill's rules, they don't just stay in that town. They follow you. Always. The door closed with a soft click, and I stood there, the fog wrapping around me tighter, as though it were trying to pull me back into the world I thought I had escaped. I turned, the weight of the package now unbearable, and made my way back to the truck. The sound of my footsteps was swallowed by the fog, but my mind raced. Was it a warning? Or was I simply imagining it? I don't know how long I sat there, staring into the darkness, the truck engine purring like some beast ready to move again. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eric, and everything he represented, was right. The town wasn't finished with me. I had believed I could outrun it, outsmart it, but the truth is, it had already taken hold of me like a slow poison, creeping through my veins. I started the truck. The road stretched out ahead, and the fog seemed to thicken, like it was trying to swallow me whole. Maybe I could keep driving, just keep moving. But as the wheels turned, I felt the pull of Ashmill again, its rules, its shadows, its curse, whispering from the deep dark. The final delivery would never come. It was already here, and I was still running. The mist curled around the truck as I drove, a familiar whisper in the wind that I couldn't escape. And in the distance, just beyond the trees, I saw something, a flicker of movement. Someone or something watching. No matter how far I went, no matter how many miles I put between myself and Ashmill, I knew one thing for certain. It wasn't over. And it never would be.